At our staff meetings, we do this. It really works. And I don't have a big, booming, projecting voice, so that helps. Thank you. It's great to see all of you here. Many of you I know, many of you I have yet to meet. I'm Mark Stutrud. I'm President and CEO of Lutheran Social Services of Michigan. What an honor it is for me to be here this evening. How great it is to look out at all of you. Wow, to see you come and participate in the celebration of mission. That's really what we do is we get together a few times a year, a half dozen times a year or so, and have an evening like this where we share in celebration of mission. And mission for us at Lutheran Social Service is about Christ's love, being Christ in a broken world, because certainly that's the case, isn't it? And when we think about Jesus in the sense of his love and what he was willing to do for our sake, that really raises the bar for me. And I begin to feel an enormous responsibility toward what is it that Jesus would have us do in this organization? What impact would we bring in the lives of others? How could we bring Christ and his love in a broken world? And it's a great privilege and it's a high expectation. So tonight we're going to talk a little bit about the organization, the mission, and particularly we're going to focus on Refugee Services. We try to pick one segment of what we do and talk about it in more detail. So tonight we're going to talk in more detail about Refugee Services. And I've got about 10 minutes, and I know you're waiting to eat, so I'm going to go fast. It's good. We're one of the state's largest social service organizations. I don't think there's another that goes from cradle to glory as we do in the areas of senior adults, persons with disabilities, and kids and families. And a great span from adoption of infants to older teens to refugee resettlement, families that are in transition from homeless shelter to permanent home, for kids in a neighborhood that come to a community center, meals delivered out of that community center to senior adults, to group homes and home care services provided to persons with disabilities that otherwise in the 1970s or early 80s would be in an institution today. What a span of service it is that we provide from cradle to glory and in those three areas. And it is a great privilege to do that in the sense that it is this expression of love, and we try to find ways of serving and meeting hopes and dreams, to figure out what's most important in the lives of others. And a few years ago, we interviewed those that we share in life with, and we asked, what is it that's most important? And senior adults were very clear on this. Number one, I want to be independent for as long as possible. Check. Number two, I want to have some choices as I age. Check. Number three, I hope that it's affordable and I don't run out of money before I die. Check. And the fourth one was the most important. They slowed down a little bit on this and tried to explain it in more detail. I would love to contribute, to be able to contribute, to be of service or to be of help to someone in my life, my family, my community, my neighborhood. I want to be contributing in some way till I quit breathing. And that's most important, isn't it? So when we think about services to senior adults in our organization, we think about contribution and affordability and choice and independence. We think about that. We bake it into our planning and what we do. When it came to kids and families, they said to us, we really want to have some sense of permanence. We don't want to feel like we're just floating from paycheck to paycheck, wondering if we're going to be able to live in our home, not knowing how we're going to get along as a family, how we can hold together, that there would be some stability. And also that I, as a kid who's been in foster care, I would love to have a loving, lifelong connection in my life. I would like that. I would like someone to be in my life long beyond I'm 18 and into my adulthood, making a connection with me. Persons with disabilities, it was pretty easy to do. Persons with disabilities said, help us not be isolated. Help us be integrated within the community and the neighborhood. That where we are, where we're living, help us be a part of things. And mostly, help us in our hopes and dreams. Because we have hopes and dreams, and it's very difficult in an isolated position to get to where we want to be. And so we work in each of these areas, and we think about Christ's love in the sense of what others hope for. And it really is a rich sharing in life. I like to characterize it as being a loving, messy business, because it is. It's never easy, nor is it simple when we involve ourselves in others' lives. And our staff are expert. They're absolutely expert at entering into someone's life and doing it in a way that eventually they receive an invitation to be a part of that life. And when we receive that invitation, what a privilege it is to be a part of someone else's life. Refugee Services, we as Lutherans have had a long, long experience of this. It's only within the last, I would assume since the late 1940s that we've really been concentrated on what are called asylees, or those who had come from other countries as refugees because their lives, their family, their living is all threatened, and they can no longer stay in their home country, but they must move someplace else. You know, in the establishments of camps. It started in some ways with World War II and with German families. But it started before that. You know, we were refugees of different circumstances. Even though we were called immigrants, we were fleeing from hunger. And many times we were fleeing from any opportunity to grow as a family or an individual within a country because of the economic conditions of that country or the class system of a country. So we've had a long tradition in America about immigration and fleeing from circumstances that are not conducive to growth. And also in the past 50 years primarily, a history of refugee resettlement, asylees, those who can find asylum from the dangers they face within their home country. Lutherans have had a tradition since the beginning of the time in the United States of welcoming the stranger. From the beginnings of the Lutheran tradition, we have welcomed the stranger. We've been a part of welcoming groups of immigrants and others into cities and rural areas and migrating in different ways across the United States since the very beginning. I believe that Lutherans have been concerned about their neighbor and loving their neighbor in miraculous and dramatic ways. And we see this over and over again in the history of cities and where Lutheran congregations have been. And in fact, the origins of Lutheran Social Service of Michigan is in city missionaries. And my understanding of a city missionary was that they would not have a congregation, but they would have a home and their family, and they would serve their neighborhood. And one of the founders of this organization was a city missionary. In 2003, we interviewed his daughter, and we asked her what it was like, and she said every night there was always someone there for dinner. All of our closets weren't full of our stuff. Our basement wasn't full of our stuff. Our basement was full of things that we were going to give away and clothing that we were going to give away to others. Our backyard was full of chickens and other things that could be used in food, in preparation for food, and gardens and canning. It was about welcoming the stranger and loving the neighbor. It's a long, long history. And we have had this history as an organization this past almost 80 years, and welcoming others from different countries to America and helping them make this transition. We have two national groups we work with. One is Lutheran Immigration and Refugee Service, and that's both Latvian Lutheran sponsored, Missouri Synod Lutheran Church sponsored, and Evangelical Lutheran Church in America sponsored, all three. And then we also work with Episcopal Migration Ministries, EMM. At this time, I'm honored to serve as the board chair of Lutheran Immigration and Refugee Services. Quite an honor and a privilege for me. And seeing this international view of what's going on in the world and what may be coming our way and how we as Americans can begin to prepare to welcome others and to help others become new Americans. And it's also about immigration as well as refugee resettlement. And that's a touchy subject these days. I won't pick that one up tonight. But that's a touchy subject. But it isn't going away. We have to find some resolution to it. So since 1975, the United States has resettled over 3 million refugees. Since 1975. We, as a nation, are the most welcoming nation in the world. No other nation even gets close to the number of refugees that we invite and help come to America. Nowhere else in the world. I won't necessarily sync with all of my PowerPoint presentations. Michigan, particularly in southeast Michigan, we've had a history of welcoming Vietnamese and among refugees, asylees. And it was really stemming, of course, from the Vietnam War. Many of the surge of refugees that come to America come as a result of a military intervention or wartime in their country. So you can chart out, the progression of refugees as you look back in history of World War II, of the Vietnam War, the Korean War to some extent, as well as conflicts in the Middle East and continued conflicts now, as we see in Syria. Each time something like that happens and we see tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands, now millions that are migrating into refugee camps, we can be prepared that there's going to be something happening in the sense of the United States making decisions about how to help in this world situation, particularly when we're the only nation in the world that really opens their arms widely in the sense of citizenship and helping others become new Americans and become a part of our culture and society. In mid-Michigan, one of the programs that we have that's very unique is that we have unaccompanied minors, refugee minors, coming to the United States. And this program is an amazing program. You think about it, anywhere from, I believe, 15 to 17 years, staff? You nod your head somewhere in there? Yep. Just think about that. Not having family, not having anyone really to care for them, not having, as I mentioned earlier, that loving, lifelong connection. And making it to a strange place and then trying to figure out what it is that will work. And how do I get to know all these people and language and culture and school and the educational process and what will happen and what will I be and who am I going to be connected to and with. And then in West Michigan, we really began in our beginnings with what was known famously a few years ago as the Lost Boys of Sudan. In 60 Minutes has focused on this group of men, young men, a couple of different times. And it's really gone much beyond that and has become a place and a destination for many African refugees and asylees over the past 10 years, particularly Sudanese as an example, as one example. And again, most of what we do is to reunite family members. So part of the family may be in West Michigan and Grand Rapids, and part of the family may be somewhere in Africa. We're working to reunite, to connect them, the two. It could be sons and daughters to parents, it could be parents to kids, it could be siblings to sibling, it varies depending on what's going on. Very important work. Very few of what we do are what's called free cases, bringing those who have no affiliation into Michigan. Almost all of our resettlement at this point has to do with those who have family or someone to connect with once they arrive. Since 1997, we have resettled 2,000 refugees. Is that correct, Richard? 1997? Thank you. And this year alone, we're going to approach around 1,200, I believe, if I have my number right. Bellman's not here to correct me, so I can say whatever I want. I guess our director, I believe it's somewhere in that range. When we look at our service, we can't do it alone. And Lutherans have had a long history of support of refugee families. In the 1970s, particularly when the Vietnamese families were coming to the United States, we had sponsor families. It was a sponsor family approach, and many within congregations would have particular concern for a family, a group of families within a congregation, providing transportation and clothing, helping with housing, appliances, just getting acquainted and navigating through a new culture. And that's somewhat similar today. We don't have those sponsor families as prevalent as we have before. In some ways, it's because we have family that we're reuniting to, and there's greater support and help in that. But there are other ways for you to be supportive and to help us. One thing is, of course, continuing to have the federal government view America as being a welcoming place. And, there are decisions made in the bureaucracies of Washington whether there will be 50,000 allowed this year or 70,000 allowed. And just some good advocacy and letting them know that you think that extra 20,000 would be a great idea makes a big difference. Every time you email or call in, They write that down, and if they get so many, they say, you know, maybe we should look at 70,000 rather than 50 this year. Just think of that, an extra 20,000 lives of God's children coming out of a camp, most likely, where life is routine and boring at times, and there really isn't any sense of vocation or future. And coming to a new place where we can provide some freedom and an opportunity to grow. Tell others about what's going on, and help us in spreading the message of importance of welcoming the stranger and loving the neighbor. Specifically, when it comes to a refugee call to action, the things that we can do particularly, we have a match employment program. That employment program is wildly successful at finding a match for new refugees that come to America and finding a job. We can always use funds to match and help in that process. Items for donation, household items, appliances, very much in need. As soon as we get them, they're gone. Transportation, I would also urge you to think about cars that run pretty well that you'd want to donate. We could easily give away 12 cars a year if we could find those who would use them responsibly and help them get to understand how to maintain and to continue them. And volunteer in setting up a home. It's like the sponsor family concept, but also just helping them navigate through the newness of the culture and what's in America that has not been in their lives before. English as a second language teacher, or cultural integration mentoring, providing transportation back and forth to clinics, back and forth to with the immigration and the documentation process, finding jobs and interviewing for jobs, working as a medical liaison. I think most of us need a medical liaison the way healthcare is today, right? Just think of it if you come to this country and have to navigate it with minimal English language skills in addition. When Lansing, and again, that's the unaccompanied minors, some particulars about that. Again, the household goods of helping a young person set up as an independent young adult. What do they need? They need everything. And also transportation at times and getting started in school and work, school supplies. And there are opportunities to volunteer. We need foster parents. If you know someone within your congregation that you would encourage to pray about this and to consider it, we would be most appreciative of it. And mentors and tutors, or being a host parent, having someone in your home for a period of time, helping them launch and make that transition to independence. You can have faith that when you invest in our organization that we'll use your resources wisely. You can see that most of that dollar goes into service. Most organizations like ours are spending anywhere between 15 and 20 cents of every dollar. We're spending only 7% or 7 cents of every dollar that we receive in contribution. So we really pour it back again into service to make sure it gets where it's needed. This is about love and Christ's love. And we invite you to be a part of Christ in a broken world with Lutheran Social Service of Michigan. Thank you.